Welcome to the Unfettered Wealth Podcast with Eric Tashlein from Connecticut Capital. In this podcast, we help business owners and successful professionals plan for better wealth outcomes. Join us for this journey where we explore ways to help you identify better wealth decisions to help you achieve an unfettered life. It's time to ask yourself, what do you want more of?
Hello and welcome to Unfettered Wealth with Eric Tashlein. Eric, what is going on this morning?
Hey, good morning, buddy. How are you?
I'm doing fantastic. We might get some natural thunder and lightning on this podcast this morning. We're talking and this storm is just rolling through. So we'll see how this goes.
No problem. I know you're out in Nebraska and there's crazy storms and tornadoes all the time. So,
oh yeah, we're used to it. We just hold on to the mic tight as the tornado tries to rip it out of our hands and keep going, right?
And speaking of tornadoes, there's a local business here in town that's blown up. It's really growing like crazy. And this morning, our guest is Scott Drozd, who's CEO of FCP Euro. Good morning, Scott.
Hey, good morning. Really excited to be here, guys.
That's awesome. Scott had given me the tour a couple weeks ago. And I'll tell you what, if you look at the beginning of the company to where it is today, it's just really mind-blowing. So I'm so excited. I'm going to give the listeners just a quick bio and we'll get right into it. But Scott is the CEO of FCP Euro. It's a real fast-growing leader in the online resource for European auto parts in that industry. Their vision there is to be the world's trusted resource for European vehicle ownership, maintenance, and repair. And the brand promise, which I thought was really cool, he's like, if we wouldn't put it in our car, we won't sell it to you. So that's kind of the basis of the company, the thought process there. Scott has over 200 employees. He's expanding rapidly. Oh. It's great. And it's great to see that in Connecticut. He hosts some local events as well, Cars and Coffee. My friends who have European cars just think he is invaluable in terms of the go-to place to get parts. So good morning, Scott. How are you doing today?
Good. I'm doing great. And thank you for the kind words. I appreciate it. I got a very interesting story about the brand promise that we can probably get into later, but that's definitely an interesting one I'd like to share with everybody.
No, that's great. It's simple and to the point, and it's great. And it just conveys trust, which I know you guys are all about. I have a question. I know you're a proud Yukon Husky, local guy and from Connecticut. How did you get involved in this particular industry?
But yeah, that's a great question. Back in the 80s, there was a small brick-and-mortar store in Groton, Connecticut, Foreign Carpets of Groton. And it was my best friend's parents' brick-and-mortar store. And Nick, my business partner, we grew up in the store. He was behind the counter with his dad. I was a delivery truck driver. We both went to Yukon in 98. And when Nick was up at Yukon, he started selling some of his parents' products on eBay. So I wasn't really sure what I wanted to do. And right after college, Nick calls me up and says, "Hey, I think I've got something good here. Do you want to come down and sell auto parts with me?" And my initial response was, "No, not really." And we didn't know what we wanted to be when we grew up. So this was kind of an opportunity just to make some extra spending money. So that was, around 2001. And man, the rest is history. It's been 20 years. And it never started from a love of cars. Mm-hmm. We always enjoyed cars, but we really got passionate about the business side, learning how to grow an online business and transition a brick and mortar store to a second generation business, what that transition was like. So that was always the interesting part for us.
No, that's fantastic. As a layman, I love sports cars. I have an extra garage bay waiting for one of my eventual cars for sure. But when I think of auto parts, generally, I think Napa and some of these other retail shops. But I know you guys are different. So what areas of the market are you guys really focused in on?
Sure. So the automotive aftermarket, kind of stepping back, it's a very large industry, $450 billion. And that automotive aftermarket is really anything after a new car sale. So it's the second owner. It's any purchase after the sale of a car, kind of off the factory line. Mm-hmm. There's two components of the automotive aftermarket. There's the do it for me, and then there's the do it yourself. The do it for me is the larger part of the market, and the do it yourself is the smaller part, but it's a fast growing piece. And then within that, there's the online versus the offline. So where we play is primarily the do it yourself, direct to consumer, as somebody that wants to fix and repair their car themselves. And obviously, being online and an e-commerce company, we specialize in online distribution.
What's really cool about your website when I went on there was just having those how-to videos for the enthusiast that just wants to buy high quality parts and like you said, do it yourself because the garages aren't cheap.
Yeah, I think when people, we specialize in cars that are between 5 and 20 years old. Mm-hmm. And a lot of these European cars, second owner has purchased a car that was originally $90,000 and it's depreciated significantly, but they still want to put the same quality that came in the car out of the factory. Mm-hmm. But when they bring it to the dealer and they get a quote on brakes, they don't want to spend $2,500 on brakes for their car. So really that's kind of where we fit in. It's a second or third owner of a European car that really wants to maintain their vehicle, same quality like it came out of the factory, but doesn't want to spend the money at the dealerships. So we're able to offer the same parts for a fraction of the price, but we're also, with the instructional videos and the how-tos and the technical articles, we actually teach people how to fix and repair and maintain their car. So they're not only saving money from the parts, they're also saving money in the labor. So where $2,500 for a quote for brakes for your BMW, they can buy the components for us for $300 and we give them the video to fix and repair it themselves. So you can imagine the savings there that we can provide. And there's also a pretty big enjoyment and from the customers when they start to learn that skill.
No, that's awesome. As a boater, I'm like, I think you need another division for boaters too, because the service bills are pretty outrageous.
You never know.
So from a service standpoint, so what are some of the things you are doing to kind of set yourself apart from the competition?
Yeah. So when I think about what we're doing that's a little different than say an Amazon or a Rock Auto, those guys tend to typically just provide parts. Mm-hmm. We provide solutions. So again, it's the technical videos, it's the YouTube videos, the instructional pieces. We offer kind of diagrams to help understand your vehicle and kind of look at the parts you may need. So there's a solution approach that we take that's above and beyond just selling the parts. We also know that when you buy parts for your car, you're typically needing multiple parts to complete a job. So we're doing a lot of virtual merchandising and kitting. So we know that you just don't need to buy, one brake pad, but you need all 4 brake pads and all 4 brake discs and the brake fluid. So we package that up virtually and sell those as kits. So really, we are a very solution-based e-commerce company, but really the big differentiator is our lifetime guarantee. So when you buy oil from us, when you buy wiper blades, brake pads, we guarantee those for the life of your car. So a lot of our customers will every 4 or 5,000 miles, they'll buy a new oil change kit from us. They'll package up, drain their old oil, send it back to us, and we'll refund them the cost of that. So that lifetime guarantee is something that is very unique.
That's awesome.
And doesn't exist in the industry.
No, that's awesome. And let's face it, guys need kits. We need things that are set up simply for us. And so I kudos to you for packaging everything, because I think our whole life you should be able to purchase most things in our life in a package like that. So that's very cool. I know you've been at it 20 years. I know, having done the tour with you and met you, I know you're a high energy guy. And what I noticed walking through your business was there's a level of excitement there, right? You can tell that the employees have buy-in on the vision you have for the company. So I'm just really curious. I mean, a lot of the listeners here are business owners. I know you've learned a lot the last 20 years about scaling a business. So from a leadership management standpoint, like what is the style that you adhere to and how has that kind of adapted over the years as you've grown?
Yeah, there's a lot of things that we've learned or I've personally kind of adapted over our growth trajectory. Mm-hmm. I think that for the engagement piece is you really have to make the employees feel like they're part of the company. And to do that, there has to be a high level of transparency. It's got to be a clear vision. Mm-hmm. Does everybody know in the organization where we're going? Do they know why we're going there? And then when you make decisions, they have enough context to understand why the business makes decisions. So really there is a high level of vision, a high level of alignment, communication, transparency, but also 20% of our earnings or our EBITDA goes back to the employees on a monthly basis. So we have 20% of our earnings that we share with the organizations. We get up in front of the company every month. We talk about all aspects of the financial performance, the cash flow, EBITDA, explain to really try to help them understand what they do not only contributes to this overall success of the company, but how it impacts the financial health of the organization. All of the 207 employees, I think we're at today, really they feel like they've got some skin in the game and they're part of the organization's vision and mission and success.
That's really cool. So that management thought process where you're profit sharing with the employees on a monthly or quarterly basis, where did that come from? Is that something that you guys came up with, or is there another company that you've looked at and you're trying to mirror in certain ways over the years?
Yeah, I don't know if it came from another company that we were trying to mirror. It's just one where we had a small equity participation pool and we're growing that, but realizing the impact of what a little bit of equity does, we thought, let's supplement that with also profit sharing too. And so we literally the first, I think it was 2016, that's when we really first turned a meaningful profit. And I can remember the first quarter we turned a meaningful profit. We started the profit sharing, and it started with very small. It was $50 checks. But now 5 years later, on average, everybody in the organization at the end of the year is going to be between $10,000 and $15,000 of profit share bonus. And it's even our front line that's in the distribution center.
No, that's great. And I'm sure there's multiple reasons why you see your staff humming, but that certainly can't hurt, right? So that's great. So I love this discussion, right? Because it's hard to grow a business. You get over 100 employees. I'm not sure that everybody's name, but knowing you probably do. So I appreciate that story and that trajectory. When you first started the career, what were some of the hurdles, or what were some of the things you wish you'd known when you began to scale the business? Looking back, you're like, gosh, I wish I could have talked to my younger self.
Yeah. Well, the importance of cash flow, that was an important one. Profits don't equal cash. Then I got a really strong mentor and really taught me some of the fundamentals of the difference between revenue and profit and cash flow. So taking myself out of the income statement and working more on the balance sheet side, but more on the structure of the organization. I think the biggest lessons learned were you got to make the investments in the right people early on. I think a lot of the mistakes we made is we needed somebody to fill a role, and the company is undercapitalized and doesn't turn a lot of profit. So you tend to kind of say, what can we get at the lowest cost? And that's never the right strategy. So really got to invest in the right people. And if you invest, that's going to pay dividends versus you don't invest in the right people. You don't bring the right people in. There's going to be a lot of soft costs. There's going to be a lot of retraining, a lot of attrition. So that people piece is really critical. And I wish I would have made bigger investments into the right people early on. Second thing is the process and management systems. So doing a lot of things ad hoc, not having the right people is just really a recipe for mediocrity. So you've got to really have good process, good communication, good management systems. Things have to cascade down from the top down to the bottom of the organization. People have to know, how to do things, a lot of training, a lot of discipline. So the right people, the right process. And then I think it's a lot of it is communication context. People have to understand where the business is going, what's acceptable, what's not acceptable, what the value system is. Giving them the context helps them make better decisions, so you can start to decentralize decision making away from just one CEO or president, but letting the organization be able to make decisions. It's kind of the only way you can scale, because at 200 employees, you've got to let a large amount of those just trust that they're going to make the right decisions.
Right. Now that's awesome. And we were joking a little bit about sleeping at night. It sounds like it's paid off for you. So at least you're getting in some decent sleep these days at this stage. So that's great.
Some nights. Yeah.
I mean, listen, anybody in the past I've spoken to that has grown a business to this size, and I know you have plans to continue to double it. What is a failure that you experienced along the way? And what was something that you learned from it that really helped propel the business forward?
Yeah, I actually have two of them that I want to share. The first one, we'll go back to the brand promise and kind of the genesis of where that came from. Early in our days, in the late 2008, 9, 2010, we got into importing product from the Asia Pacific Rim. So really got seduced by the high margins And admittedly, our supply chain was a little low quality. Mm-hmm. We were naive. We didn't realize the difference in quality from a supply chain perspective. We made some bad decisions on what type of automotive products to bring in. Mm-hmm. And I can remember one day we got a phone call from one of our customers who owned an older BMW, and one of the ball joints on his control arm, fell off, and he lost control of his steering and went into a guardrail. And thankfully, he didn't get hurt. Yeah. So that was a wake up. And then 2 days later, another customer called, same situation. Ball joint came out in his control arm. He had his family in the car. Again, he was able to regain steering, but that was a really scary moment. And the short of it is we had about 200 of these products out in the marketplace that we identified that were suboptimal, that were putting our customers in danger. And we had to file a recall through NHTSA, National Highway Traffic Safety Association. Mm-hmm. And it was one of those moments where for a couple of weeks, we had these products out in the market, and it wasn't a great feeling. And Nick and myself committed that if we wouldn't put it on our car, we wouldn't sell it to our customers. And that thought of us putting families in danger, it routed us. Sure. So we got up out of our seats, and we brought a group of about 5 or 6 employees with us that were car enthusiasts. And we went into the warehouse and we said, we want you to point out every product in this warehouse that you wouldn't put on their car. And they pointed everything out. We removed it from the shelf, and we scrapped about $300,000 of product that we didn't feel like it was acceptable. And at that time, that was a large amount of money for us. We were a smaller company. Sure. And then we just decided tier 1 OE suppliers, everything comes from Europe. Mm-hmm. We want the best. And we've kept that brand promise for well over a decade now. So there's a lot of lessons in that. I think the big lesson was quality will always endure over the long term. So never kind of sacrifice short-term profitability for long-term value creation. And that applies to a variety of other things. And then the second big mistake was we had our first bank loan in 2011, mm-hmm. really not understanding financial covenants, what a covenant even was. We ended up tripping a covenant. The bank loan got called. The line of credit, we had drawn down it fully, $750,000. We had no money in the bank, and the bank called the line of credit, and we ended up coming very close to insolvency, bank seizing our assets, taking over our primary checking accounts. We got out of that situation, thankfully. Took a little begging from our parents to save us on that one, but but really learned a lesson about kind of financial stewardship. Again, really understanding there's some real nuts and bolts to it's not just sales and marketing. It's really what's happening with the fundamentals, structuring the credit facilities, understanding the right metrics to know where the business is headed. So that was a really tough lesson of almost losing the business, but really giving us some very strong financial discipline.
Now listen, Scott, those are great stories. And what I appreciate about you and your vision is that you're very long-term focused. I mean, I've always been that way here at my business as well. It's like, do the right thing and have a win-win philosophy for the customer and for your employees and your company as well. And that's a winning recipe. And kudos to you guys for doing what you're doing. And then also, I think it's super smart. It sounds like you've put in maybe some redundant systems now. If you need financing along the way, that you're not going to have a bank close you down. Good for you for that as well.
Thank you.
That's smart. For business owners that are listening, and I hope they are, because this is just great takeaway stuff. From an employee productivity standpoint, you kind of hit on it, right? Some of the things you've done to motivate your employees. Anything else that has helped you kind of increase top line revenues and profitability within the business?
Yeah, I think that, as I mentioned, it starts with the employees. You got to make them feel like they're part of the company, high level of transparency, a lot of communication, profit sharing. But as far as the top productivity, top and bottom line, we implemented something about 4 years ago that I was pretty transformational. A typical financial close, you've got the management team. They close the books, say the January finishes, the finance team closes the books in January. It takes about 2 weeks. So you're 2-3 weeks in February, and then they compile the reports and sit down with the management team in late February. And you're talking about January. Something happened. Well, what happened in the first or second week of January? Now you're almost in March, and it's tough to respond when there's that much latency with the reporting. So what we did is we decided to move to essentially real-time financial reporting. We did some pro forma on a weekly basis, made some kind of estimates. So every Monday morning, we sit down. There's about 25 of us, and we can essentially look at a financial statement that looks at our revenue, cost of goods, gross profit margin, operating expense, EBITDA, cash flow from the previous week. So we know on that Monday, we know exactly what happened in the last 7 days. That gives us the ability to pivot and adjust so much quicker than waiting maybe 3-4 weeks after a traditional financial close. So I think that real-time financial reporting, along with a lot of metrics for each department that we review on a weekly basis, got us dialed into how the company is doing. And that visibility really, I think, accelerates the performance, or at least makes you aware to maneuver better.
Yeah, that's awesome. It's almost like wearing, my Apple Watch, right? Like constant monitoring of heart rate and all that. And because your business is obviously, it's a living, breathing thing. Yeah. The one thing that you mentioned to me when we were doing the tour, which I thought was very cool, you're like, we have this junior executive team that is really helping to run the day-to-day. And you guys and the executive group are really steering the ship a year and a half out. Do you want to speak to that a little bit?
Yeah, so just to kind of step back, we crossed the 100 million mark last year. Company, thank you, appreciate that. The company is expanding rapidly, and we've been growing at about 55% year over year for the past 4 or 5 years. And with that fast growth, there's a lot of fires. There's a lot of day-to-day. And as the company continues to grow, taking an inventory of kind of where my executive team is at, where they're spending their time, realizing that 80% of our time is spent on the urgent, on the fires and the day-to-day. And we have aspirations to be $1 billion company by 2025. And the only way for that to be possible is if I take my 10-person executive team and we are working 12 to 60 months out on long-term positioning, on strategy. So that's where we decided we need a secondary team that can really run the business throughout an entire fiscal year. So we've got a 10-person executive team. We've got an 8-person secondary leadership team. And that secondary leadership team is our bench. And it's going to do a couple things. It's really going to do a lot of the blocking and tackling on the fiscal year. So they'll have P&L responsibility. They do a lot of the quarterly business plans and quarterly business strategies. They do a lot of the annual strategies. So really they're doing everything from the day-to-day to give the executive team some more capacity to work in a longer term, time frame.
That's awesome.
But the second piece is, thank you. The second piece is, at any given time, I can take one of those, secondary leaders that's on the bench and pull them right up to the executive team, and they can be a, highly functioning executive. And you can think about the empowerment there and the level of engagement when you've got a director or a manager that is now having exposure to really deep, business and getting very intimate with the business.
Oh, that's fantastic. Great stuff. And I appreciate that, because it is not easy going from 10 to 50, 50 to 100, and then doubling to 200. It sounds like, based on your goals, I know you said you truly want to have a 100-year company. So you're really putting a lot of thought into this. So that's fantastic advice to anybody listening who's trying to scale up.
Yeah, thank you.
Outside of business, I've met your family. They're wonderful. And I'd be curious, we talked a little bit about hobbies, but if you can share with the audience a little bit about your family, some hobbies and pursuits outside of work that you have.
Yes, I live in Milford. My wife got 3 boys, 9, 6, and 3 years old. So you can imagine the energy in the household. And I certainly love spending time with all of them outside of kind of just being with the family. Love to cook. Nice. Big boater, and avid fisherman.
Oh, nice.
I really like to have an affinity for the water. I need to be around it. It's just it's my center of gravity. It's going to be on the water a lot. And then just physically just trying to do something every day, running or lifting some weights. So trying to stay physically active, enjoying good food and with family and friends, doing some fishing. Nice. And yeah, that's my life.
That's awesome. Hey, by the way, the striper run is on right now. I keep talking to my friends that seem to fish a lot more than I do, but they're getting the 40 and 50 pounders coming through right now. So you got to get out.
There's a full moon, and that's when the stripers are out. So yeah, I'm out there every day fishing for them.
Oh, nice. So I'm going to have to start texting you for tips too. In terms of, listen, I know you're a big-hearted guy, and you obviously want to help your friends and your family and staff. And are there any helpful items you give away, or have there been some books that you tend to give away that you hope will help people improve their lives?
Yeah. I think a lot of my help is just more on the mentorship side, personal or professional. Yep. So always there. I know a lot of people come to me or feel comfortable coming to me, not just on the professional side, but personal, because I think there's a very heavy overlap there. And you need to kind of look at both of those to kind of have a holistic view of life and fulfillment and happiness. Mm-hmm. So a lot of just time spent with people, helping them think through problems. So I give a lot of books. I'll recommend a lot of books. It really depends on the topic. Big Jim Collins fan, Good to Great, Built to Last, Patrick Lencioni, Amy Cuddy. So avid reader, probably read 1,000 business books.
That's fantastic.
But yeah, always trying to every day trying to pick something up, and it's a podcast, a blog, a book.
That's great. Yeah, the tagline for our podcast is Unfettered Wealth. With all the effort you're putting in, are there some things that you hope the business will allow you to do from a freedom standpoint someday?
Yeah, we have aspirations of someday being in Florida. We're kind of the cold is a little tough for us, but our families are up here. But from the business side, my aspiration is the business gets to a certain size where there's enough liquidity to kind of hand the business over to a second generation that can run it. Nick and myself take a board seat, are still involved in the strategy of the company, but we've got a new generation that can kind of carry it forward. And then with some of the liquidity from the management team, the executive team, we open up our own fund, either VC, growth equity, private equity fund, and really try to help businesses through a lot of the different inflection points that we have gone through, whether it's 10 million, 25, 50, 100 plus, not only just giving them the capital, but giving them the very specific resources to accomplish the goal. So yeah, it would be, I think it would be really amazing to be able to kind of move outside of just Connecticut, participate in a lot of other businesses more strategically and help them in a different capacity.
No, that's great. And I see that you have that teacher in you, which I appreciate, and that consultant. So I could totally see you doing that. That's fantastic. Scott, if somebody wanted to reach out to you or just wanted to learn more about your company, what would be the best thing for them to do?
Yeah, so you can always email me. My email is scottd@fcpeuro.com. Call, text 860-301-1434. I share that with all my customers too. I have over 300,000 of them that take me up on that. So I'm an easy guy to access, and kind of it's part of me. It's just I like to be accessible, but you can find me pretty easily. LinkedIn's a great spot too. I'm always having conversations on LinkedIn. So yeah,
that's great. No, that's fantastic. Scott, thank you so much for being on the podcast. Hopefully we'll do a second one down the road as you double here. And don't be surprised if I start reaching out to you on your fishing reports.
All right. It was a pleasure.
Guys, this is fantastic. I got to say, Scott, it was very refreshing to hear a very successful business owner talk about the lumps that they've taken. It's not every day. I mean, I interview and I speak to a lot of people throughout the year, and it's, I've made my mistakes, but you really kind of dove in and said, hey, here's what happened. Here's what went wrong. Here's what we did to correct that situation. And the care and concern that you showed throughout this podcast for your clients and for your employees was amazing. Obviously, this is why Eric brought you on the show. I mean, you guys, it was great.
I appreciate it. I try to bring my full self and be as authentic as possible. So, and I hope that comes through. It sounds like it does. So
it definitely did. Thank you so much for being on the show. And of course, Eric, thank you for bringing him on the show. But this is your show and you choose your guests wisely, and you have again. So thank you so much. And of course, our last thank you goes to you, the listening audience. Thank you so much for tuning in and listening to the Unfettered Wealth Podcast with Eric Tashlein. If you have not subscribed to the podcast yet, please click the subscribe now button below. This way, when Eric comes out with a new podcast, it'll show up directly on your listening device. This makes it much easier to share these podcasts with your friends and family. Again, thank you so much for listening today. For everyone at Connecticut Capital Management Group, this is Eric Johnson reminding you to live your best day every day. And we'll see you next time.
Thank you for listening to the Unfettered Wealth Podcast. Click the subscribe button below to be notified when new episodes become available. The information covered and posted represents the views and opinions of the guest and does not necessarily represent the views or opinions of Connecticut Capital. The content has been made available for informational and educational purposes only. Content should not be construed as personalized investment, legal, or tax advice. Please consult your advisor, attorney, or tax advisor in regards to your individual situation. Eric Tashlein is an investment advisory representative of Connecticut Capital Management Group, LLC, a registered investment advisor. Connecticut Capital Management Group, LLC, and Connecticut Benefits Group, LLC are not affiliated.